In this week's Descent into Villainy, the first deck profile that I want to touch on with the arrival of EX9 is going to be Abbadomon and Negamon. These Digimon were first introduced in the Adventure Reboot series of 2020, and while at first I thought this deck would be a gimmick like so many other villainous archetypes, it honestly has a fantastic start to what it can do. For the narrative of today's video, I will more or less go over the entire archetype again if you happen to miss the set review episode for it, before diving into some of the different choices and going over not just one deck profile, but two. There are other ways to build this deck, but from my experience in piloting the deck, these are the two variations that I honestly fell in love with. As always, if you enjoyed these types of videos or find them informative, do consider sharing the video, liking it, and subscribing to the channel for more future content. Negamon is the level 2 Digimon of this archetype, and is in essence the King Drassel or Gate of the Deadly Sins of the archetype. However, unlike camping in the breeding area, this level 2 actually slots itself into your Digimon as they're played. There are upsides to this, but there are also downsides. On the upside, you can reduce your play cost depending on the number of Negamons already in play or in the breeding area, but the downside is in the face of D-Digivolve, it's kind of rough if you go from level 4 to level 2, and your stack is removed by game mechanic. Level 2s cannot exist in the battle area. While Negamon and Abaddomon decks don't necessarily have the same explosive OTK power that I've shown in previous deck profiles, the selling point of this deck is its impressive defensive capabilities. Negamon's Inheritable is a once per turn effect that redirects your opponent's attacks to any Digimon in play with Negamon in its text, and while removal can send your Negamons to the trash, the thing is, you do not care. But for the reduction, if you were to play soundbirdmon for example, using this Digimon's effect you can play soundbirdmon for a cost of 1, and then do a search. However, if you already have a Digimon with Negamon in the sources or Negamon in the trash, soundbirdmon's cost is further reduced by 1, making it 0 memory. Soundbirdmon of course is the searcher, and your sole level 3 of the deck. This lets you find a Digimon with Negamon in its text and one card with Abbadomon in its name, level 6 or level 7. While finding a Abbadomon core is important, if your matchup targets the trash, having one in hand can also be critical, but you have many ways to find it. Your level 4s look at the eyesmons, one of which can draw 2 cards when you trash a card with Negamon in its text, and one that can evo on top of scatter mode that has rush and collision. On my initial review I had to wonder why the collision was so important, and the fact is, it's rareraremon that ties most of these redirect effects all together. When you think about it from a DP perspective, eyesmon scatter mode to eyesmon to rareraremon means your Digimon has a minimum DP threshold of 9000 DP, combined with Negamon's Inheritable, and you can redirect any attack into this beefy body. As for Abbadomon, this Digimon is your last resort Digivolve into level 6 as you turbo use your eggs. That's right, you're trying to flip your eggs as quickly as possible and use them up so that your breeding area can make room for another special Digimon. Abbadomon also acts as spot removal for your deck, so not only do you have redirects, you also have spot removal of the same level Digimon you tuck under it, and more. Meaning for the last Digimon, it's of course Abbadomon core. This level 7 Digimon is the endgame goal of the deck, being the first Digimon that has the moving keyword. During your opponent's turn, in the breeding area, by returning 4 Negamon from underneath your Digimon's Digivolution cards and or trash to the Digi-Egg deck, you move this Digimon to the battle area. When you move it, by placing 3 level 6 or lower Digimon with Negamon in their text from the trash under this Digimon, you delete all of your opponent's Digimon with the lowest level. Did I mention this Digimon also has blocker of its own, as well as collision, piercing, security tech +1, and reboot? Because combined with rareraremon, this means you can unsuspend with that collision, and then because you have piercing you'll check 2 security before going again. And while I've gone through every card in the archetype, what is the general style of the deck? First and foremost, early renditions of the deck made me think you need to run memory boosts, whether it be black memory boost, pride memory boost, or even something that introduces a secondary color. And after a lot of testing I can tell you right now that this is not the play. While delay and extra memory is nice, the goal is not to set up memory, but use those 4 Negamons as quickly as possible. Each turn, you'll flip Negamon, then use its effect to reduce a Digimon's play cost by 2 or more memory. Because remember, after you do this empties the breeding area, and the whole goal is to use all 4 Negamons in order to play out that big boss monster Abbadomon core to end the game. Which takes me to the second major point of discussion, before diving into the combos in the form of Tamer discussion. Tamers are crucial in this deck for many reasons, but the number one reason in my mind is the fact that there isn't a large variety to choose from. Which is ultimately why it's funny that eyesmon scatter mode became the Digimon that you can run 50 copies of. For Tamers, because a lot of your top-end Negamon related cards utilize cards from the trash, some players may deviate immediately to Analog Youth. One other element about this Tamer that's really good is that when your level 5 or higher Digimon with sources is deleted, you get to suspend this Tamer to gain a memory and hatch another egg, meaning you can capitalize on utilizing Negamons much more quickly. The only downside to this being that your level 5 or higher Digimon must be deleted, which heavily restricts this to rareraremon, Abbadomon, and the core, though the core being out normally means you're about to win. The second Tamer I experimented with was starter deck Taikamiya. While a memory fixer, this Tamer complements Negamon quite well for your redirects, converting that maximum 9000 DP rareraremon into an 11000 DP body while also drawing you a card. For a defensive option, I honestly really like it. But the last and final Tamer I experimented with was none other than Mimi Tachikawa. This Tamer allows you to suspend it if you control a green level 5 or higher Digimon. While this does create its own problems, with the fact that you now need to run black-green Digimon, finding good ones was ultimately its own set of problems. But running multiple of them definitely created a crazy turn, especially if you Abbadomon core the previous turn, and now you have 4 eggs to cycle through. Which is why when it comes to the overall style of the deck, you're playing defensively the first couple of turns, flipping Negamon, and then using its effect to either search with soundbirdmon, or you're playing out eyesmon scatter mode, and passing over 3 memory to start filling the trash. Each subsequent turn, your cards will get cheaper and cheaper to play, assuming there's no floodgate. And once you're on your 4th turn, everything changes for the fact that once you play out another eyesmon scatter mode with a reduced cost of 0, you now have an empty breeding area to which core can be placed to. Keep in mind, the whole time, you will be using Negamon's Inheritable to redirect attacks, so optimally you could be checking the security and potentially surviving, and then using the redirect into your Digimon. But Digivolving into rareraremon helps slow your opponent down by de-digivolving the stack and making them spend memory to do it again. And with an empty breeding area, Digivolving into Abbadomon means you set up the ultimate trap for your opponent. First off, if you did pass your turn with Abbadomon, you'll attack any level 6 or lower Digimon with Negamon in its text for immediate spot removal. And when they attack, you can push Abbadomon out by returning all the Negamons from under your sources and trash and have a blocker. Ideally, you could do all your redirects first before you send the core out. Core has its own ability to board wipe the lowest level, which again, helps with defense. Which is why for the first deck profile, this went back and forth with fellow Digimon fanatic and Judge Lepani, who threw me some ideas for this build. Although he also credits fellow Judge Robo Sushi, which is why they'll both be mentioned here. The first variation of this deck is probably what most players will gravitate towards, and offers more defensive options that can help you in the short term. The second variation of the deck offers an option that finds us in a meta with the long game and repeated board wipes. To save time for this video, simply note that the deck runs almost 4 of every card in the archetype. The only card that I think you could go down by 1 copy is the core. Since you do technically want to find it as quickly as possible, it doesn't matter if it's in the hand or the trash. For this segment instead, the focus will be the non-Negamon related cards and how they supplement the archetype as a whole. EX9 Abbadomon is probably going to be the secondary level 5 I recommend for this deck. Not only because it offers a taunt ability or potentially DP reducing floodgates out of existence, but also for the fact that its inheritable supplements the ability to place cards in the trash. Because the only card that can be played is going to be soundbirdmon. The rest, whether it be Abbadomon core or the scatter modes, that helps you more in the future. And because we're running level 5s that can be more expensive, this does mean that we're likely to pass turn, meaning we're going to be running some level 6 Ace Digimon. Initially, I wanted to try Shadow Seraphimon Ace because there's more DP reduction in a redirect. But in my discussions with Lepani, this is where after reading and testing Darkdramon Ace, this is most definitely the card to go to. Not just because it can de-digivolve your opponent's Digimon and wipe the board of the lowest level, but because it has Scapegoat. And deleting your level 5 or higher Digimon for this could yield results, especially since the deck runs the 4 copies of Analog Youth. And as much as I've discussed Taikamiya and Analog Youth, what's left for this deck profile are the option cards. Black Scramble surprisingly does a good job with recycling certain black cards, especially the level 5s and 6s. And because it can reduce your Digivolution costs, it ultimately makes Abbadomon a cost of 3 instead of 4. But the really funny option card that I played with was Final Zubagon Punch. Let's be real, are you surprised that this card is in the list? We've seen it in Alphamon, War Greymon, and even Pyramidimon. Of course a black deck is going to run this. This just adds extra checks for the core, or a lot of shenanigans for the main body. But changing gears to the final segment of this video, it's the variant that I feel is best designed for a long game. Meaning you play something, your opponent kills it, you play something, your opponent kills it, but then you redirect and then eventually your opponent's out of gas and you're out of gas, what can you do? While not often, I have seen the occasional game where a Royal Knight player popped King Drasso with Omni's effect, but couldn't end the game there. Likewise, I've seen an Abbadomon come out, only to get biting crushed from a Leviamon. And ultimately, this means that the player had no backup play since what their deck normally did for the setup was gone. But with this deck, the beauty here is that Abbadomon Core recycles the eggs for its move out, meaning you can start the whole process all over again. And arguably the next build you see on screen is probably more of a meme variant that turbocharges your deck's entire strategy. In a situation where I've been beaten down to 1 security, but my opponent had set me up 3 Mimi Tachikawas, and potentially utilizing all of them depending on what's in the hand. Which means with an empty breeding and the potential of another Abbadomon Core, pretty memes. In order to supplement this specific tamer, I had to search for a black and green level 5 and 6 Digimon. And the search did not take long. Starter Deck Rapidmon offers the transition from black to green, and because it is a green level 5 Digimon, this means Mimi Tachikawa's effect will proc. Additionally, because you are using a green tamer, this protects your Digimon from bounce or deletion effects. Did I also mention this Digimon can de-Digivolve one of your opponent's Digimon? The best part is, if you climb up to Abbadomon, you have a redirect to this Digimon which can also trash security. But of course, for the secondary level 6, it's Mega Gargomon Ace for the surprise block and multi-checks. Though as a result of this particular lineup, maximizing Rapidmons and Mimis, you lose the final Zubagon punches for this build. In the end, I'm not going to say that either of these builds are the perfect way to play Abbadomon and Negamon. Instead, I'm offering only avenues for you to explore to find out ultimately what works for you and your local meta. Again, with an unknown format, it's hard to say what will be the best deck in the format. But what are your thoughts on some of the choices here, and why? Let me know, and I'll catch you on another upload this week. This is DIGI-PANDA, logging out.